The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus took Peter, James, and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no fool on earth could bleach them. Then Elijah appeared to them along with Moses, and they were conversing with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, "Rabbi, it's good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He hardly knew what to say. They were so terrified. Then a cloud came, casting a shadow over them. From the cloud came a voice, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." Suddenly, looking around, they no longer saw anyone but Jesus alone with them. As they were coming down from the mountain, he charged them not to relate what they had seen to anyone, except when the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what rising from the dead meant. The Gospel of the Lord. My dear friends, let us visit again the book of Genesis in the beginning. When God called out to Adam in Eden after he had eaten the forbidden fruit, Adam hid himself from the Lord. And when God called out to Abraham in today's first reading, Abraham's first words are, "Here I am." Adam's disobedience leads to his unwillingness to face God. Abraham's obedience is displayed by his immediate eagerness to respond to God. Abraham could not have imagined why God was asking him to sacrifice his only son any more than Adam could have imagined why he could not eat the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But unlike Adam, Abraham placed his trust in God and responded obediently. Dear brothers and sisters, on this second Sunday of Lent every year, we hear one of the accounts of the Transfiguration. The glory of the Lord is revealed as Jesus talks with Moses and Elijah in the presence of these awestruck disciples. This should perhaps raise some questions in our minds. After all, we are supposed to be in a time of penance, a time for serious evaluation of our lives as Christians, and not a time of glory. You realize now the glory has been put on the shelf till we will sing again glory during the Easter season. But why? Barely 10 days into this season of Lent, when Easter is still over a month away, why do we focus on the glory? Jesus' transfiguration to Peter, James, and John gave them a vision of our Lord in glory. But it did not show them the price he paid to get there. So they continued to misunderstand the kind of Messiah Jesus was. But of course we know. We know the price he had to pay. We know how he was raised in glory to sit at the right hand of the Father. In the Transfiguration, my dear friends, Jesus reminds us that to arrive at the glory of the resurrection, we have to pass by the cross, as he himself showed out with his life. We have to pass by the cross in order to go to the glory of the resurrection. Our desires, our wishes are usually similar to those of the disciples who wanted the easy way to glory. Certainly, we don't want to suffer. We do not want to experience pain. We always want the easy way out. And there's nothing wrong with that. But my dear friends, in our Catholic faith, the cross and the resurrection are two sides of the same coin. We must never allow ourselves to think of one without thinking of the other. So the balance between the cross and the resurrection, the balance between sorrow and joy, helps make sense out of a lot of confusing aspects of spiritual life. And since both are necessary for our growth in holiness, just as sunlight and darkness are both necessary for the growth of plants, God allows us to experience both in accordance with the timing that he deems best. In our lives, we have sorrows and joys. That's the fact of life. And Pope John Paul II, in one of his encyclical letters, Redemptoris Mater, he spoke of the obscurity of faith. But also, when you read Pauline letters, St. Paul put it in a different way by saying that we walk by faith, not by sight. Dear brothers and sisters, whatever way we phrase it, one thing is clear to all of us. Living the Christian life is not easy, because we often fail to see clearly how God is leading us to our destination. But the story of Abraham reminds us that seeing where God leads is not necessary. What's necessary? Faithful obedience is what saves us. That's why Abraham is regarded in the scriptures as our father in faith. Just think of also St. Paul. St. Paul is the apostle of the Gentiles. And that's why when you open the New Testament, you see quite a lot of his letters to the different churches. Paul was personally called by Christ out of the error of his former ways and given a singular mission. But then what happened after being called? When you read the life of St. Paul, he was beaten, stoned, shipwrecked 3 times, and he had to go through quite a lot of suffering. Yet, in our second reading today, without any trace of bitterness and full of faith, Paul confidently says, if God is for us, who can be against us? In other words, my dear brothers and sisters, nothing can separate us from God's love made manifest in Jesus. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. We receive our Lord in the Eucharist, nourishing us in our work to carry out his mission. And that's why this Sunday, my dear friends, with Abraham let us always put our faith in the Lord, even when darkness at times blinds our eyes to see God's light.